Welcome to Close the Gap, where we thoughtfully engage with CEOs and top industry leaders all working to close the female equity gap in the C-suite and boardroom. Christine Gannon, the CEO of Brightworks Consulting, and Dr. Antoinette Farmer-Thompson, a senior leader with Arizona State University, host insightful conversations responsible for moving the needle for female participation in the C-suite.
Good morning and welcome to Close the Gap. We're excited to be here today with Susan Brooks on behalf of Christine Gannon, CEO of Brightworks, and myself, Antoinette Farmer-Thompson. We're excited and delighted to have you, Susan. Welcome.
Grateful to be here. And I do want to start out by congratulating you both for an outstanding effort and compilation of such incredible breadth. I mean, the people that you've spoken to, men and women, the quotes that you use, the documentation. I mean, what a project, and congratulations. I'm honored to be part of the tribe.
Well, thank you. I think we've done about a tenth, maybe, of what you've done in your life. And if you would allow me, I'd like to share your bio. So Susan, as a business growth specialist for both business owners and corporate leaders eager to increase profitable revenue with controlled and strategic growth, Susan is absolutely the real deal. She has run the entrepreneurial gamut of starting, growing, selling an iconic multi-million-dollar award-winning company, a company that sold cookies, yes, lots and lots of cookies, which we love. She's been in the trenches with her red boots on the ground for more than 30 years. Susan's proven strategies deliver results, a financial sustainable business that remains competitive in today's changing market. Susan brings her firsthand knowledge and expertise to every single client that she takes on. You will experience Susan's passion during this time and enthusiasm as she helps you create a service-driven culture, coaching existing and potential leaders, strategic and innovative marketing that demonstrates your company's brand and messaging. And might I say, she does that for individual women as well. And just a little bit more, she's a sought-after international speaker and author. She's engaging and highly interactive with her audiences. Her on-stage presence brings her powerful and relevant information to life. The ultimate customer experience, career jumpers, how to avoid a talent free fall, and especially today, she rises, progress, power, and purpose. Susan's mission is to make event planners a hero. Now, she's done so much. But in addition to all of that, she celebrates 5 decades of marriage, 2 flourishing adult children, and 5 genius grandchildren. Well, of course they're genius. Of course they are. And I'm going to turn it over to Christine so that she can get us started.
Thank you. Susan, welcome. Your bio doesn't do you justice, though. Honestly, it really is leaving out so many pieces and parts that people could only know about you if they talked with you. And so we're hoping that that comes out today for our audience. But talk to us a little bit about what's in that bio, because your experience starting Cookies from Home, which those of us in Arizona and beyond, if we were lucky enough to receive something out of state as a gift, was impactful and monumental, a monumental business in your life, multi-million-dollar business. Talk to us a little bit about you starting that and the impact it had on your life.
Oh, my heavens. To me, the most important thing for any business is to be able to serve. And it can be with a chocolate chip cookie. It can be helping someone that is having a rough day and they need to get through with a little sweetness. It could be someone that's celebrating some wonderful victory. But that was the train we rode. It was through cookies how can we serve? How can we create the best possible experience? And we realized, I was in business with my husband, which in and of is a major challenge, especially because you mentioned we're still married. That was really raising two children. I mean, it was all at the same time, but it was back in the 80s and 90s, and women business owners were few and rare in the marketplace. And I know that Cookies from Home became my platform for my own self-expression, as well as being a trailblazer for other women, because it was all men, and therefore that was what prompted me and two other women to create NABO, which is the National Association for Women Business Owners, because who else could I talk to about missing a parent-teacher conference for my kids because I had a sales appointment that became the priority. Of course, I had justified all that because it was for their braces and their summer camps and all those kinds of things. But I was on a mission. I was driven to be a role model. I grew up with a role model. My grandmother was a businesswoman long before women were invited, let alone accepted, into the workplace. So I had that you know what? It's grit. That's what made me not quit, which was something that came up often, especially as we scaled up. I needed to stay in the game. I needed to figure it out. And that's what I think was my personal secret ingredient, and why I'm honored to be included in your research and in your book. So Cookies from Home taught me how to lead. It taught me how to create a team that would not only accept, but deliver my vision of service, not only for my internal customers, my team, but for my customers that were willing to take a bite. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you absolutely did. Absolutely.
You brought up grit because we've had a lot of discussion about that, right? Together,
of course.
As we spoke with you, and you brought even more wisdom. Tell us then, as you reflect back on starting a business, growing a business, a multi-million-dollar business, selling the business, raising kids, staying married. I mean, Christine and I just finished a global women's transformation conference through Plus Alliance, Arizona State University. And we were talking about solutions for women in leadership. Like, how do we get more women who have that desire to lead and have that desire for family? How do we get them to the C-suite? And someone said, you start your own businesses, you become a CEO right away. And we know that doesn't happen. It grows over time. But what were your grittiest moments?
Oh, how much time do we have? Never enough, right? Well, I would say one of my greatest challenges was in 2008. The economy had surprisingly bottomed out. I will admit that I was blindsided. I didn't see it coming. Our sales in 2007 were strong, even, again, because it's cookies, it was a seasonal business. So I mark our progress by Hallmark. And Valentine's Day was the next one up. And it was equal to, but not less than, what we had done in years before. But by the spring, it was very quiet out there. And not only that, but we had certain issues here in Arizona that were very scary for a small business. And especially because we were dealing with immigration issues, we were dealing with an accountability that had never really been been called for before. And a lot of our production, our bakery people, were Hispanic and had been with me for years. So come and the best workers, I might add, because they would stand on their feet for hours. They would show up. They would bring their cousins and sisters and neighbors when we needed to bring a greater staff. Anyway, my point getting to my grittiest moment is I had to figure out in those times where I was going to be able to do Christmas in 2008, going from 50 people at my usual troop to 250 people, and knowing that I had to find another resource. So there was a night, 2:30 in the morning, I'm sitting on the floor in my office and I'm talking to my grandmother and I'm saying, what am I going to do? Where am I going to find the workers, the staff, in all areas of my company? How am I going to be safe politically in this environment and still be able to serve my customer? And she gave me the idea. It came through the night, and it was to hire grandmas, to hire grandpas, to hire the people that know how to bake cookies, to notice that it was the seniors that were being challenged the most. They're on fixed incomes, so the extra holiday money. Not only that, but if you can picture 250 grandparents, and the only requirement was that they show up at the job fair, which we had, we went on for hours and hours, but they had to bring pictures of their grandchildren. And if they weren't grandmas, but they were wannabe grandmas or grandpas, they were wonderful aunts, but they understood the culture that we were all about. And we had the best holiday season, enough financially, but the main thing was the experience of walking around the bakery floor and listening to these stories, the humor. And of course, we did Grammy Awards at the end of the season, and they all received not only money, which was very helpful for them at that time, but mainly they made new friends, and they felt worthy, and they felt that they contributed. And I think our cookies tasted better that season, better than any of the other ones in our 30 years. So grit was needed because A, I couldn't quit. B, I already had corporate deposits for that holiday season, and I had to deliver, that's my word, every single day that we were open, which was 30 plus years. The momentum, the energy, the synergy, I'll always remember that season. I'll always remember that it was grit and my grandmother that pulled me through.
Oh, what an incredible story.
I honestly can't hear that story enough, Susan. There are so many lessons just in that story.
Right?
To pivot, to transition, to trust your inner guidance, to use that, to dig for grit. Not only use grit, but dig for grit that, maybe you didn't even know you had. Courage, wisdom.
Thank you. When you're in situations like that, you just think it through as best you can, and then you do it. And I didn't think about all those attributes, all those benefits, all those traits that it took. And thank you for acknowledging that even today. I really appreciate that.
A lot of women especially get stuck because of fear, right?
Yeah.
The fear and the lack of confidence. And so they don't do what you did. They might have quit, right? There's a lot of failed businesses. So they might have quit. So I want to acknowledge there's a lot of lesson in that.
Well, I thank you. It was a choice point, just like that's what grit needs, is the choice point of choosing to stay in the arena. One of my favorite quotes was the Roosevelt quote that you mentioned about the man or the woman in the arena, that they go in there every day. And, it's the blood, the sweat, and the tears that it takes to go in there and give it all that you've got. And Brene Brown has done, as you know, daring greatly. So I look back at that and say, yeah, every day, I'm in the arena. Until my last breath, I feel that's how it's going to be. Amen.
Amen.
I have another example of grit, if we have time, and I'll try and make it fast. So this was back in the 90s and the early 2000s and the 80s. And our greatest piece of collateral was our holiday catalog. And it was always a very personal experience. I remember one Valentine's Day where I was Cher and my husband was Sonny, and I actually, believe it or not, my makeup person, in that instant that the camera went off, I looked like her. We're the same age, by the way, which is kind of funny that,
wow.
The story. Anyway, we always choose a theme for the holiday brochure that would be non-denominational, obviously gender neutral, all of those things. And I had just at that time my very first grandchild, and so he was born in July, and here we were shooting in September or October, and my artist, my graphic designer, loves animals, loves nature. He's a real strong soul. And we had decided that our theme was going to be the moose. The moose is a generic holiday. And I walked into the shoot, and there on the wall was the head of a moose. And I was in shock. And then when Jordan was brought in by his mom and sat on the antlers of this moose, I just was really, and he was not comfortable up there. But they left me saying, I think I got a good one. All I needed was one good picture. And I went home at the end of that long day, and I couldn't sleep, and I was pacing. And I called my designer up at 7:30 that next morning, and I said, can't do it. Won't do it. Susan, what are we're on deadline. This is going to cost you. We're going to be all over budget. Can't do it. Just can't do it. And that was one of those times that, I had to really rely on my principles. And I couldn't make that statement. And so we shot it again, and we used all stuffed animals of the moose. Jordan was dressed in red and white stripes, and he had a Santa's hat on, and he was holding his stuff. It was our best season. That's all I'm going to say. And it was one of those where I went to sleep that night exhausted, but I knew I did the right thing. And I think that level of grit shows up in getting into the arena, maintaining your principles that you cannot cross over, and live with yourself. And right to the very last day of Cookies from Home, when we were the owners, before the new owner stepped in, I walked the building. I walked through my staff, because my heavens, for 30 years, a lot of people had come through, and I've got lots of stories about that. But I felt that I fought the good fight, that I got, as our John Lewis says, I got into good trouble. And so thank you.
Good trouble.
There are so many lessons in that story as well. We could stay here for hours. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your transition into your business today. But before we do that, I want to share just a little bit about statistics, because I think this is super important in terms of women as they take a risk, especially right now during COVID, to start a business. So the US alone has over 12 million women-owned businesses, and those businesses generate $1.8 trillion a year. 40%, almost half of US businesses are women-owned, and women started over 1,900 new businesses every single day last year. 64% of new women-owned businesses were started by women of color last year. Latina women-owned businesses grew by more than 87%. And last but definitely not least, there are 114% more women entrepreneurs than there were 20 years ago. So this is super timely, as you talk about taking risks, as you talk about innovate and pivot and make these tough decisions, it all comes back to you as the woman and your grit. Talk to us a little bit about your transition from Cookies from Home and how you decided to start your new company, and a little bit about that.
Great. I might add another statistic, though I'm not sure if it's changed recently, that only 3% reach $1 million mark. The grit that it takes to cross that threshold is not a common experience, unfortunately, which is why I dedicate so much of my life and my passion and my purpose to empowering women. We only hired women. I mean, my husband and maybe one other person. I'm not saying that was as deliberate as it sounds, but women need the opportunity. And I needed them. I needed what they bring to the equation. When Cookies from Home was sold in 2010, I of course stayed on to due diligence through August. My husband was released from that obligation. I was very jealous of that. And he's been teaching Zumba all these years to seniors, I might add. But when my last day was done, I had to find who I was. It was Susan Brooks, Cookies from Home, for 30 years. It was an iconic business. So because Cookies from Home was such a great story, everybody, at least in our Arizona turf, had experienced it or knew about it. And now I'm Susan Brooks. Now what? Who am I? Where am I going? Who am I serving? What? And I really had to dig deep. And again, I think it's grit that made me realize, I couldn't work for someone else. I am an entrepreneur. Even when I was teaching, I was in trouble with the administration all the time because of I didn't follow the state adopted textbook. And I had to wake up my students in however way that I could. And I felt that my years as a woman business owner, I had a whole education right there in real time that was of value to that statistic that women were wanting to start businesses. I had several that were in the corporate arena, and they were ready for that shift. And how do I shift from that? I had many clients that were that had an idea, whether it was a salsa or whether it was an app that there weren't enough role models out there. And I might also add that knowing how to grow and knowing how to make money, those were the areas that kept me awake at night. And yet during those years, there were only male consultants. There wasn't coaching at that time. And what did my male consultant know about running a business 24/7, because when you're a business, you're a different beast. You're always thinking, you're always worrying about an employee or competition or the bottom line or new ways of doing what you've been doing after 30 years. So I really had to realize that I had information, I had inspiration, I had lessons learned that if I could have learned those from another woman earlier, I would have had a different life. It was always, I don't want to say a struggle, but it was always a mission. Again, I was driven. So I think that being aware of that, and now because there are so many coaches out there, and of course, like anything else, we've all specialized in different areas, that you can find the one that's a perfect fit for you. For me, my client is the one that wants to hit that $1 million benchmark. They're at 200,000, 500, 750,000, and they can't get the grip to move forward. Well, that's where you talk to someone who's been there, and the lessons. And of course, I'm a teacher. Underneath everything, I'm a teacher. So it took me a while to figure out that what I wanted, I already had. I don't know. Does that make sense? It's like I had valuable, relevant information and real life stories that could help women get to where they deserve to be, with just a little bit of push, a little bit of being able to just listen to them and hear their challenges and their fears. Women struggle. They struggle with a few things. Confidence, which you mentioned, Christine. We need more practice. We need more practice achieving. We need more practice stepping up into leadership. We need to trust our gut, not only the brain, but our gut, because that's where the truth is. And so building up that confidence. The other thing that I think women struggle with is perfectionism. We have to be as good, if not better, than our male counterparts. Well, guess what? They've had more practice. They know how to delegate.
Wow.
Men know how to delegate. They have wives, they have secretaries, they have an admin support team, and they feel, not speaking for them, but my experience, because I also have male clients, interestingly enough, who is willing to take advice from a woman and follow it. So women are the opposite. They oftentimes are lone rangers, meaning they hold their jewels close to their chest. They feel that if it's not done by them, then it's not going to be good enough. So they don't really trust that someone else could do the job other than themselves. So that limits their growth. And that perfectionism ain't going to happen. How can you grow if you're perfect already? And you're not. So it's like you're setting yourself up. Another one is that guilt, the mama's guilt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit that if I had to do it all over again, I would do it differently, only in the fact that I feel like I missed a lot. Again, there was nothing like Christmas and cookies from home and holiday time. And that's when our children were doing their band concert, or there was an important football game that my son, actually, football was not his thing, but I still had to show up, whatever it was. And I would arrive on 2 wheels, if need be, still smelling of cookies, which wasn't a bad thing. But I mean, I was just from work to get there, to be there for all those times. So the good news is they turned out, and I might add, both of our children are children. They're 40 and 50. They're 50. They're closer to 50. Okay, I admit it. But they're both entrepreneurs. And they're both in strong marriages of 20 plus years. They're both parents. And I can't tell you how great it feels when they come to me and they say, how did you do it, Mom? How did you get to every soccer game? How did you do it? And I went, how I did it. You're not saying, why weren't you there? How come you weren't there when I needed you? No, they understand. They're living it right now. So that's a tremendous amount of gratitude. But these are all the pieces that keep women stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the grit is buried down deep. They've got it because you see they've had the vision, they have the desire, but the grit that it takes to do that leap and trust it, it's hard to come by. And Christine, when you ask me how I transitioned, well, serves you right. It was all about creating service-driven cultures. And because I was blessed with an opportunity to be a columnist in the Phoenix Business Journal for more than a dozen years, I was able to do my research live and in person in the marketplace. Of course, rarely did I mention the culprit that was sound asleep at the wheel, because I hope that everybody in that industry would think I was talking about them, and learn from that lesson. And then when I was brought into China at CIAS University to work with women, young women who were literally in university for the very first part of their generations, they were just off their pig farms, really, coming to a university and to develop their global leadership. And that's actually where I went soon after selling Cookies from Home. It was not a good time for me to go, but my agreement was that I'd be there. I created the curriculum. I was one of the first facilitators of the World Academy for the Future of Women. And that's where I remembered who I was in China, when I was talking about leadership and realizing that I was talking to myself. And I'm still connected with several of those wonderful girls that have become women today. So now I work with companies in the medical field, like Sonora Quest Laboratories. They've brought me in several times throughout my history and theirs for their leadership, for their top leaders, and then their middle managers and supervisors, and then the people on the line. Because where else do you need service more than in the medical industry? Mm-hmm. How many times do you walk in to a doctor's office and you see the top of someone's head rather than, hello, we're glad you're here. The other industry that I serve is hospitality, which of course is dealing with a lot of challenges right now. Aruba brought me in to do a tourism conference because they're all about tourism and service, and they needed to know what to do to make sure that they are delivering the promise. And that was a very interesting time because I had to tell the truth. I went from the airport to every hotel, to every kiosk on the beach there, and had an experience. Some were better than others, and others needed a lot of work. And after my research, I, of course, delivered my information as best I could by telling the truth. and served individual business owners as a result. So working with individuals, I work with men who are willing to grow. I had a popcorn client that was on the edge of franchising his business. And that was a great ride. But I confess, I really love working with women because I know them. I know how they breathe. I know what keeps them up at night. I know the challenges they have in growing a family and keeping a marriage vibrant during that time. I know I had to learn, that's another thing about women, or at least what I found, many women are not comfortable with numbers. I wasn't. I didn't know how to read my financials until I had to. And that, Christine, is another story with my $5 delivery boxes that were costing me $2.37 out the door. So I had to pivot in a big way. And having done that pivot, it's what got us to our first million and our second and our third. And that was corporate gift giving. Okay, did I answer those questions?
So Susan, final question to wrap all of this up. And we'll go back to the first question, your role model, your grandmother. So out of all of the work you've done, the World Academy for the Future of Women, raising incredible kids, having a multi-million-dollar business that you sell, and then your husband can go and teach Zumba and be a blessing to
seniors,
more seasoned folk like myself. Tell us, what would your grandmother say?
Oh, you're going to make me cry, Tony.
No, like what would she be the most proud of? Because you've done so many things.
She talks to me every day. Every day she's right there. Pictures of her all around here. And whenever I forget who I am, I think of her. What would she be the most proud? You know what? I think what would make her overflow is knowing that I'm happy, that I'm fulfilled, that I have given love and received love, that I have served, absolutely, that I have my license plate says ILV to SRV. I love to serve. I live to serve. And I think that would make her very, very proud. And what makes me the proudest is that many people tell me who knew her that I am her living legacy. So I hope that that's true. I live to reach and exceed that goal. And I think women really, when you ask, how do you get more confidence? How do you get more practice at being a leader? The most important thing is recognizing our ancestors, those women that are that's in our blood, that can exemplify truth. And today, I'm so grateful. There are so many role models for us to look at, for us to learn from, for us to embody. I mean, RBG, I cried for days to have lost her. You look at Jane Fonda. Mm-hmm. Look at, she's gray. She is out there on the front lines. I look at Nancy Pelosi. She's in her 80s. I look at Gloria. I mean, I walked with her. Excuse me. I marched with her. Look how she changed the world.
Susan, I think your grandmother would be incredibly proud of you, and I think she would say all of those more. I want to make sure our listeners know how to find you. Where could they find you after today?
Well, of course, my website is susanlbrooks.com. See what happens when I talk the whole time here. My email is susan@susanlbrooks.com. And I welcome feedback. I welcome questions. The difference between coaching and mentoring is important to me. I mentor ASU students in the Venture Devil program that are wanting to open their own business. And I coach women and men in ways that they can create a self presence and a service-driven culture. And I welcome your calls.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. You can find more information and connect with Christine or Tony at www.tffei.org or on LinkedIn at the Foundation for Female Equity and Inclusion.